total, so let's move on to match number 2. It is going to be Glory versus tom60229. And Tom, a player who continues to impress me after, I think I've known Tom, I think the first time it was like 5 years ago or something, maybe 4 years ago.
You've known him a while. We get it, Raven, you're famous.
Oh no, I was not famous. I'm not famous now. Never mind when I knew Tom. All I mean is Tom. I met Tom about 4 years ago in the UK when he came to a tournament.
Yeah.
And he impressed me then. Although I obviously knew nothing about him other than he destroyed us all in Open Cups. Me and Sol just used to lose to him all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And he, qualified and played in the UK. And since then, obviously, he's gone on to some reasonable achievements. So I've heard, kind of a world champion. But throughout GM, yes, he's not qualified to global finals, but he seems so relaxed and so consistent that I almost just expect Tom to win most matchups every week, almost regardless of what he's submitted. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, he's one of those players that it's difficult to find fault with, even though when he's doing things that are obviously wrong, because he's just so cool about it, so relaxed. Like, you're wondering, can what he did actually have been wrong, even though he just like misses 5 damage and then relaxes back in his chair?
Yeah, imagine that. He just passes, just doesn't play a 1-drop on 1, even though he's got it, it's completely correct. He's like,
I mean, he's done stuff almost that egregious over the course of Grandmasters, but at the same time, I am happy. Yeah, he's got the classic Tom pose there.
Yeah, that's exactly how he plays.
Yeah, I'm glad he's doing better in Season 2 than he was in Season 1. A 2-0 start is obviously a very nice way to get the ball rolling. And as we can see here, pretty much identical strategies in terms of the shield and the ban, at least, even if not with the actual decks being brought. Warrior shielded, Druid banned. I think we may be seeing this a fair bit this week, as it is pretty much the equivalent of what we had last week, where the standard was Shield Warrior ban Mage. Now it's Shield Warrior ban Druid, because I think a lot of these players are thinking that the Druid is the one thing that could stand up to their Warriors. Yeah,
and what's going to be interesting, I think it's going to have its most impact this week because of the sudden meta change with the nerfs.
Yeah.
But I feel like one of the pros in GM should have just tweeted a very random deck list with a fake screenshot, rank 2 legend with this deck, and made everyone play it like an idiot. Because that's what I feel like so many people have done, because Orange has touted Druid as the best deck. I
mean, everyone's hit rank 1 legend with Druid questions.
Yeah, but so we touted this Druid as the best deck, and as soon as someone, like Orange, tweets this deck's great, people just try it instantly. All the pros just instantly try it. That's what I would have done. It's maybe why I'm not allowed in GM.
You've been like,
fact I'm working.
Guys, Murloc Mage. It's the nuts, trust me.
Guys, just rank 2. No one would believe I'll get that high, but maybe if I was a GM. But I'd be like, guys, rank 1 legend with Quest Murloc Mage. Trust me. And they were like, oh, well, we've got to play it. Wasted time for them, time gain for me.
You've just written like an orange diamond and then a crude #1 on a chalkboard.
Oh no, I'd hire someone definitely to do some sweet Photoshop skills. But let's get into game number 1 of Series 2 as we blab on about absolutely nothing.
Aside from blatant cheating, let's jump into the game.
Wait, how is it cheating? Sending a tweet that's a lie?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure many people tweet lies, Derek.
Yeah, okay, that's definitely true. But it's unsportsmanlike at the very least.
I want to win. It's good I'm not in GM, isn't it?
I guess it is.
I'm joking. So Glory versus Tom. It's going to be Warrior versus Zoo. But
what do you know?
This Zoo deck is a little bit different. It's running the Scarab Eggs. There is an Acidic Swampoos in there. There's the 1 Plague of Flames from Tom. But there's also double Sea Giant as well. So not only is it, there's a much slower, more value-based deck. There's a little bit beefier versus something exactly like Warrior, maybe Rogue as well, with that Ooze just helping out and moving. As well as Friendship Quest Rogue weapons, but Waggle picks, but then also, of course, Super Gliders and such.
Yeah, Tom's shaking things up a little bit from last week. I thought his Zoo deck last week was creative, even if it wasn't necessarily the strongest build. Now it feels like he's definitely... I mean, this is a deck that feels like someone has done his homework. The fact that he's gone with the same strategy as last week, but changed it up a little bit. Mage is out of the way, less big minions. Okay, let's take out one of the Plague of Flames. There's going to be a lot of Warriors. Okay, let's put in an Ooze. He knew exactly what he was going to be facing, and I think that shows with his preparation.
It does, and Tom might not always look like he's giving it his all, but when Tom wants to play, I would not want to play against him, because he does just get the job done almost no matter what. Right now he's got an uphill climb, I would say. I mean, you just got to look at the removal and Glory's hand. But again, it kind of reverts to, if both players get a win with their warrior, then what do the other two decks look like versus each other?
Tom here obviously with a very, very aggressive start that is unsurprisingly dealt with fairly swiftly by Glory. But it does mean that it's an interesting dynamic when compared to last game, where again, Tom has this ability to make trickier boards to deal with. This is not easy for Glory to get rid of, but he doesn't have to remove as much damage because Tom has very limited burst in the deck. He does have a Leroy, but there's obviously no Soulfires in there to amp things up.
Yeah, you already see the impact of this Serpent Egg, right? In the fact that the board can't just be easily cleaned up because it will leave a minion almost all the time. So I wonder if instead there's something along the lines of... Oh, he's going to equip Super Glide. Interesting. I wonder if he's going to, for example, just armor up Shield, slam the 4-2, trade a 1-1 and be like, well, you've got a 1 attack egg and a 1 attack minion.
Yeah,
enjoy.
It was possible. I mean, it's an awkward spot for Glory because obviously he knows there is the Ooze in the deck for Tom, which makes pre-equipping the Super Collider a lot less tempting of an option. I think, however, the benefit of getting it if he doesn't happen to have the Ooze is pretty insane.
And here we go, we start to see that Dr. Boom in hand now. 9 mana nerfed from 7.
It's a long
which
ways
means
off.
He ain't getting 7 armor for a while, and if he plays that, the whole turn, apart from exactly turn 10 of course, is gain 7 armor, pass. That's literally the turn. So it's going to be a little bit tougher for Glory to get away with some of this health regeneration. But now he has to, again, consider what he wants to do here.
And I think as it stands, Glory should be able to find himself in a situation where he can get Dr. Boom down. Like, his hand is pretty good anti-aggro as it currently stands. He's only missing health generation.
What do you think about that?
Were you expecting a full clear?
Well, yeah, the trade into the 4 attack first, and then the trade into the 1-3, and then clear everything, because now...
I mean, what he's saying here pretty clearly is I am willing to give up some of my health in order to gain more removal options. And I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't want to give him my health when I'm on 14. And
like, he's got plenty of removal. Does, of course, mean that he has a double activation of the Restless Mummy able to come through here to really help clear up this board. Like, if you wanted to, there's a very easy full clear here with double attack of the Restless Mummy, swing the Super Collider into the Vulture, and then Dynamatic Hero Power to take out the statue. Obviously, it's not that important to take out the statue because it can't attack.
I was going to say,
no tune can hold me.
Yeah, does he just may as well take the statue out?
I guess.
Oh, okay.
It's going to wall this instead.
Okay, so I'd say now, if I'm Tom, I would sit there and say, okay, he's kind of cleared 2 boards.
Yeah.
He's obviously still got the weapon, but this 3rd wave needs to get me there.
That was interesting. We could have seen there from Glory. He could have traded the second half of the Restless Mummy into the Snake instead, and then he could have Warpath twice and fit in a Hero Power. But instead he decided to lose 2 armor to take out the statue. Which I don't know if I agree with there, because there's obviously some synergy with just having a useless minion on board, because you can destroy it with the Evil Genius. But I don't know if I would have valued it that highly.
Yeah, it depends on what he'd leave it on, because the Dynamatic, right, it's like soaking all the damage up.
Yeah,
and stuff.
that's actually a pretty good point.
Because it's got 6 health. Like,
Yeah,
that thing is at least a little bit annoying.
It's tanky.
And now the Solarium coming out from Tom means that he did get a few draws, one of which was the Ooze, so he clears off the last weapon swing, pretty big. And now, I'm looking at Leroy, I'm looking at a Lackey that says deal 2, and there's a Grim Rally as well.
It was certainly tempting.
Go for Discover or Spell.
Getting the use of the Lackey while he can. I think that's fair. Like, there's a good chance that he has to face down a lot more than what it appears in terms of health. Obviously, Shield Block, Tomb Warden, all the extra taunts that come with Fright and Flunky as well. I think it's very reasonable there for Tom to pick the Ethereal. But I agree it was close.
Ooh. It's making noises now, but 2 Giants to play down.
This could start to get very interesting for Tom. I mean, I honestly wouldn't be that surprised if we see him just go for a scenario where he says, if you don't have the Brawl, I win, and if you do, I'm in a bad spot, but it's not necessarily over.
Also, even if Glory has the Brawl, Tom could still win.
Right, that's what I mean,
like,
yeah.
Because he can still...
It's not over if the Brawl is there, depending on how much he goes all in. Like, I think 1 Sea Giant is definitely the way to go. 2 is debatable.
Well, you can both and then Grim Rally a 1-1.
Sure.
Like, look how awkward this board is. What does Brawl... like?
It's true.
You could still just lose from Brawl. There's still the Serpent. You can actually trading one off as well, interesting.
Yeah, this is good actually. I like this because obviously if the Brawl isn't there, then you just win, I think.
Yeah.
And if it is there, it's still summoning a 3-4 off the Death Rattle. And very possibly a Giant as well.
Or even if the Ooze lives, that's 5. That's enough. There's Leroy in hand.
That's perfectly good.
And look at that Dr. Boom on 9.
Yeah, that feels nowhere near good enough. An entirely different game from what we saw last time, just pretty much purely down to Tom's different way to build the Zoo deck. I'm pretty sure, having seen, even just on a 2-game sample size, at least with respect to this matchup, Tom's list just feels pretty far superior to Chonsu's. I think the eggs just make it so difficult for any deck to clear off the board.
What's funny is, for me, I can't even really, well, I could if I looked, but off the top of my head, I can't really tell you what Chonsu was playing instead of all this stuff Tom's playing.
Just stuff.
It's just, more stuff that isn't as good. I feel like it's the answer, which is what worries me. And that, my friends, it's going to be Tom going 1-0 with Zoo.
Whew. Lightning fast game here. Well, lightning fast day overall. These Zoo decks, man, they are just churning through, getting things done very quickly. We do still have the possibility of a Warrior Mirror, which could come through later on in the series, but for the moment at least, Tom looks to be in a pretty good state to get up 3-0, first player from Grandmasters Season 2 to get up to that perfect 3-0 record.
Yeah, fantastic start for Tom, and honestly, I felt like, yes, exactly what you were saying, the Zoo deck just felt against Warrior so much better because you can go, okay, here's a wide board and a Death Rattle minion. And then suddenly it's not quite as straightforward. It's a little bit more difficult for the Warrior to deal with. And Glory, although he got close, if it was just a little bit more survivable, he could have made it out through Boom into Shield Slam the next turn and then maybe stuck around a little bit longer, but wasn't quite enough. And that's game number 1 at tom60229, taking it over Glory 1-0. There's more matches to be played out. Don't know what we're going to see. Hopefully not a Warrior Mirror, but stay tuned to find out. We'll be right back.
Well played!
What's up, Hearthstone fans? It's TJ Sanders. Welcome to another episode of Well Played. If you've watched competitive Hearthstone in the past, chances are you've heard the casters say something like this.
Is nothing.
Ooh, this is weird.
The game turns around this turn.
But why didn't we play? I guess he wants to. Okay, so I understand what Casey's doing.
Conceal information.
Exactly.
At first glance, what you do and don't know in a game of Hearthstone appears to be pretty straightforward. Both players can see everything that happens on the board, and when you see your opponent's class, you can get a good idea of what cards they might have in deck. Information is everything in the Tavern. The most valuable information? What's in your opponent's hand. And yet, players of all levels can be prone to certain bad habits that unnecessarily give away that precious info.
I will hunt you. I will hunt you down.
Bad habit number 1, hovering. Whenever you mouse over a card in hand, your opponent can see this as a red outline around the card. Say it's turn 3, you have no minions on board, and your hunter opponent keeps hovering over 2 cards before they settle on playing Animal Companion.
To my side.
Their only other good on-curve play is Master's Call. Based on the hovering, you can get a good idea of where the Master's Call would be in hand. Bad habit number 2, pointing. Whenever you target minions on board with effects from hand, your opponent will see a red arrow indicating your intended target, even if you don't end up casting the card. For example, you see the red arrow as your rogue opponent uses a card from the far left to target their own evil miscreant before they end turn. They just gave you 2 bits of information. 1, they have a card in hand that targets minions, and 2, it's likely to be Shadow Step because you're playing against Rogue. Generally, Bad habits like these can be avoided by planning out your entire turn in advance. Try not to hover over or point with any cards until you know the entire sequence of actions for that turn. Bad habit number 3, playing the wrong copy of a card. Though this is usually a habit born of forgetfulness, it's something that top players should try to optimize. The meta these days is rife with cards that generate other cards. Every once in a while, especially when you can discover, you end up with additional copies of cards you already run in your deck. Cards like these tend to be more valuable because your opponent can rarely account for them. When I play Cyclone Mage or Tempo Rogue, I often find myself asking, wait, which one of these started in my deck again? Unlike the history bar, where generated cards played are labeled with created by, nothing in your hand has such a label. If you're forgetful like me, here's a pro tip. Use golden cards. A golden Shimmerfly would also produce a golden Deadly Shot, and when you run into a memory block, all you need to remember is, save the shiny one. Bad habits can be hard to break, but if you consciously remind yourself of these simple solutions, you'll be reading hands like a Grandmaster in no time.
Well played!
We have our next game coming up, Tom versus Glory, game number 2, and it is going to be a Warrior Mirror match, and it's an almost identical mirror as Derek, the least enthusiastic I've ever seen. And it's almost identical mirror match, but the mirror is just a tiny bit smudged, basically, because there is 2 Eternium Rovers and 1 Omega Devastator in Glory's list, and 2 Omega Devastators and 1 Eternium Rover in Tom's list. So Glory's got the edge against the aggro matchup slightly. Tom, the edge in any mid-range to late-game matchup, I would say.
Yeah.
Even if you end up playing one of those Devastators as a Yeti on 4, still pretty powerful. So I think overall, Tom has got the slight better end of the stick in this one.
Very, very slight.
Tiny, tiny, tiny.
I mean, I would even argue that Eternium Rover is not that bad of a card in the mirror. Like, a lot of the time, it comes down to, I imagine it would be even more so now, tempo in the mid to early game can get you a pretty big advantage. It rarely wins you the game outright, obviously with all the removal and armor gain that can extend the game later on. But I would say that just being able to go Rover into Snip Snap, for example, maybe magnetize the Ziliax on, all that chip damage that you can get at the start, it really does start to rack up and you feel its effects later on in the game.
Yeah, and I feel like almost every time I watch this matchup, it is played in a slightly different way. And each players, some play it really as slow as possible. Some try and curve and play a bit more aggressively. I would high-five them. But we'll see. We'll see, because I know you value the chip damage approach as much as possible, right?
Yeah, I do. I like going for... I mean, it's a very delicate balance you have to strike, because if you play...
It's hard, right?
Yeah, if you play too much into removal, which is not easy to do as Warrior, then you can find yourself running out of removal. Later on in the game, if you use too many of your minions early on without finding use for your removal spells, you can just be left with a handful of Brawls, Warpaths, Shield Slams, and no actual threats to pose a threat later on in the game. But yes, I agree that the matchup does come down a lot of the time to who can build up that bigger armor advantage.
Yeah, and one thing I am interested to see, perfect timing, Mr. Boom, and the impact this 9 mana versus 7 mana has made, because it's less about what the number says and more about what the game state looks like, because if you now play Boom, you cannot do realistically anything else. So it's like what we talk about a lot in the Elysiana turns. It's you need a relatively safe turn that your opponent doesn't just punch you for 20 for playing Boom, to be able to play it down. And I've not played, Control Warrior because I'm not insane, on ladder I mean, but I've not really practiced this mirror match that much yet, but I think the Boom timing is going to be weird, or at least interesting.
Maybe. I think, like, for the most part, the effects of Dr. Boom will not be felt that much. Like, I think it's a great point you bring up about disrupting Elysiana timing, because I feel like that's a much easier thing to do is to stop your opponent from playing Elysiana than playing Boom, because Boom comes down much earlier than Elysiana, so there's still a lot more threats and a lot more removal knocking about on both sides. Elysiana, however, it gains you no armor, and by the end of the game when you're playing it, you'll probably run out of most of your removal spells, so the chances of there being a big board is much higher. I think with Dr. Boom, I would be surprised if we see anything other than earliest possible play coming down.
Interesting.
Assuming that he's not facing down like 20 damage or something.
Right.
But I think it's it would have to be like around that number before Boom is played. Maybe not quite that high. 10 damage.
It has to be 20.
Exactly.
Minimum.
20. Or slight hyperbole.
I see Super Glider coming down nice and early. Not going to do much because Warriors at the moment are not really running weapon removal. They have no need.
That's true. It's interesting how the weapons package of Weapons Project plus Harrison has completely fallen by the wayside, because that felt very core and honestly very strong in the pre-Bomb Warrior, Control Warrior decks. But I guess that was more of a waggle pick meta. So it made
and I also wonder as well if the decks that are running weapons aren't the decks you're afraid of anyway, right?
Yes.
Because it's not like you're playing against Q-Block, where you will lose to that deck a lot of the time. You're not playing against, say, Atiesh, Old Mage or any deck with Medivh in the past. So weapon removal is universally good, and in Control Warrior, you normally do all right against Rogue. You're normally doing, I think, okay against Hunter.
I agree.
So
yeah.
You're fine anyway. And also, you're not really proccing the secrets against Hunter anyway, so it often doesn't run out of control.
You may have realized that we are talking about slightly more macro strategies in this matchup, as opposed to the micro that's happening here, the minutia in these early turns, because generally this is not the stuff that wins or loses you the game. You are just trying to stay even with your opponent and find Dr. Boom, of course, as quick as possible. Glory here, though, being a little bit cheeky, I suppose, and getting that 3 damage through to face. Honestly, I don't mind it that much. Again, you're getting in that chip damage, has the Super Collider equipped, so if Tom develops anything else onto the board, he can probably clear it off pretty easily. One of the other things, though, that I felt pretty strongly about the last time we saw a Warrior Mirror in APAC GM, I can't quite remember who it was that was playing the matchup, but the downside, the faults in their strategy, I felt a lot of the time, was that they were too precious with their resources, which meant that a lot of the time they couldn't actually play out their strong cards, like Omega Assembly in particular, to get that value in their hand. They had to skip over Discovery Drone hero powers.
Was it Frosty versus Glory?
I think it might have been, yeah. Because I seem to remember Glory was very much going for the face damage approach, like getting in chip damage, but maybe was struggling to get value out of Omega Assembly. It was a little bit too greedy.
Yeah, and this Boom kind of leads to your point, right? Is that if you do have it on curve, it's unlikely your opponent's going to have a big dangerous board, which means for playing Boom on 9, Tom took 3 damage for his trouble, and now he's got Boom live as if it was on 7. Like the game now doesn't look too different.
So now Glory needs that time-old question that you ask yourself when you face Dr. Boom of, how do I win this game? What am I doing to give myself a reasonable advantage? And generally the thing to go for is just tempo out onto the board pretty aggressively to try and at least come up with a point where even if they're pulling ahead slowly because of the rush all their mechs have, you're not taking too much damage in the process. You'll have to expend more cards. But at the moment for Glory, expending more cards is not that bad because he has the 2 assemblies.
What do you think of not shield slamming that turn? Do you think? Because I wondered whether it was worth. Like if you shield slam, you make Tom have to face down a 4/5 and the weapon, which feels more difficult than leaving a 3/5 that can be magnetized on the board, for example.
This is what I mean from Glory, is that shield slam there was fine. It was a perfectly good shield slam. I think what he's trying to do, however, is get more value out of his weapon. While there's a minion on board, he wants to be able to swing it and connect it to another thing. But I think what he needs to realize is Tom is not going to give him that opportunity. He's going to make it very difficult for Super Collider to do anything. And therefore, the cards stay in hand, Glory takes chip damage, and he still can't activate those assemblies. And so I think, yeah, Shield Slam that turn, just get it down.
Yeah, and also, if that's the case, you know, an extreme value, then you can argue that Omega Devastator did nothing there. You know what I mean? In a roundabout way, it felt like it did very little compared to what it could do. So it just seems like a bit backwards in terms of the overall approach. I think for one of his Shield Slam, he's got coin in hand. He's got plenty of things to do.
You know, to his credit though,
to his credit,
he wins brawls. Yeah, exactly. But also, I would say he is finding use for cards that struggle to find use in the matchup. Like Brawl, if we'd gone for the play that we were looking at of Shield Slam to get cards out of his hand, in that instance, yes, he's getting out cards from his hand like Shield Slam, but he's struggling to get rid of cards like Brawl later on. And he did manage to find a situation where he activates the Brawl, clears the board, and gets the Omega Assembly online. So I think credit to Glory, he had a plan over the last couple of turns, and I didn't see it until now, but it worked out beautifully.
Yeah, it did cost him the coin, but I guess if you got the coin and never needed to use it, it's not the end of the world.
Something had to be sacrificed. Like in this instance, I'd rather have a Shield Slam than a coin, I think. Just about. It's kind of close. But yeah.
And now, Tom on the offensive again. And only with the Snip Snap as well. Kind of the overall value of the card that pushes it over the edge is it's not only just a decent 3-drop, being min because of Death Rattle, of course, but it's also just a 1-card turn for 10 mana, you know, or on turn 10 and 9. Just because you can have a pretty solid turn almost no matter what's going on if you just spam Snip Snaps.
Very passive plays here from Glory, just trying to stem the bleeding a little bit, I suppose. I've been mostly focusing on Glory's hand because he's had, I think, the more difficult situation to work through here. Tom, though, does not have, like, the easiest, like, autopilot plays here on this turn because we could see him go super aggressive with his minions, like this, for example, with the Omega Devastator and all the damage as well. He is going for most damage whatsoever, but, you know, this has its downsides as well. He's not finding use for his removal. He's running out of threats. But I think overall, with the Omega Assembly in hand, Dr. Boom in play, he should push his advantage while he can and get that chip damage through.
I actually really like this because the removal is used, the Omega Devastator, then he has Shield Slam. It means that he can transfer his removal into actual just damage and space.
Yeah.
And see how that works out because he's going to be able to attack next turn as well for level 6 if he wants.
I don't know if this was quite worth it the way he did it though, because he basically traded a full Restless Mummy with Reborn and at the full 2 health for 2 damage. Because he could have rushed
Well, he could have gone the other way around, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. The Devastator first. And I like where his head's at, which is Swarm-tastic, but I think overall 2 damage for a full health Restless Mummy, the trade-off's not quite worth
it. Yeah, I think I can agree with that.
Even though obviously you could argue it's a trade of Warpath or some extra removal. Yeah, this is Tom pushing his advantage to the absolute maximum. He is just throwing cards onto the board. And to be honest, I kind of like it.
Yeah, and the fact that Glory doesn't have Boom has probably made him go even more in, right? Because it's not only that, well, yes, you want minions on board to hit your opponent, that's Hearthstone. But the fact that he doesn't have Boom means that Glory cannot respond as well as Tom can pressure because of Rush.
Absolutely.
And the lack of Rush for Glory, which means that all Tom needs to do is just, you know, keep pushing just a little bit at a time. And even this, he didn't overcommit any crazy minions to the board. He just played the Rover and he said, well, that's enough.
It's kind of a positioning nightmare for Glory as well, because were he to swing with the weapon, he'd just be in pretty much the exact same situation he was in before he swung. Yeah. And so this Super Collider has just been stuck in hand for so long now. Tom has done an amazing job of playing around that.
There's one attachment I want to see.
The Beryllium.
Oh! Beryllium! Tom's a crazy guy. I've not seen many games of Hearthstone that you land Beryllium on the Sentry and it doesn't just win. And it would have clean traded as well.
Fair point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
fair point.
This might not be the best play that I've suggested, but I feel like if you Beryllium a Sentry, you just win the game.
Yeah, I mean, this is in keeping with his game plan, right? He's giving up higher value options in order to get more damage to face. Like this way, he obviously had 6 attack rushing in instead of just the 4 with Beryllium. So he was able to get more damage to go face.
Right.
Which, you know,
I can't remember the board state,
like it or hate it, it's in keeping with his game plan, which is to get that chip damage through. And I mean, it's worked out so far. I still think I disagree slightly with the Restless Mummy killing off, and I would argue, you know, you may be correct there. Beryllium Nullify may have been the way to go, but he's got a plan. He's sticking to it, and I can
just
respect
waiting
that.
for Mechathune comes down next turn on the 4 board. And it's like 10 now. Let's go.
Honestly, it wouldn't be that bad. I mean, Glory quite clearly does not have Brawl.
Yeah.
Tom, however, has 2 of them.
Oh, Tom, yeah. Oh, that's whatever he wants. There we go. Okay, I'm happy again. It's just so good. Look at it.
It's so good.
I think Glory was almost physically thrown back a bit there by that Beryllium. He leaned back. He was like, oh! Look at it. It's so much pressure. I don't know what he does now. Can't warp at the board. Well, you can. It'll just suck. Brawl's already been used and clearly doesn't have another one.
Yep, he's just getting beat down. And, you know, this is the situation that you don't often see with Control Warrior, or at the very least, it's less easy to recognize. Because with aggro decks, it's very easy to see when a player is saying, okay, if you don't have Brawl, I win. I'm going all in and making you have it. With this Warrior, it was a little bit more slowly accruing, this board state he got. But what Tom has been saying for the last few turns is, okay, it's going to build up to, if he doesn't have Brawl, he loses the game. And he's done that. He's got Glory in a situation where, even if he's not losing right now, given that he doesn't have the Brawl, he's struggling big time. We're going to have to see some kind of a magnetizing Ziliax play just to stay alive.
It's more like every turn, like, if you don't have Brawl, I get closer to winning.
You're
don't
losing
have Brawl,
so much resources.
I get closer to winning again, and so on.
Like, the value trading that Tom is getting is frankly absurd. Like, I mean, Warpath this, right?
Yeah, that's what I say. You just can't Warpath. You just can't.
Light the fuses!
5 mana, 3/4 rush.
Precision.
Feels pretty terrible, it's got to be said, especially with Tom very easily having a Ziliax of his own to deny the healing.
There's just Clockwork Goblin, Ziliax trade, push 1 billion damage.
Yeah.
And you put a bomb in the deck. You know, great, there's only 9 cards left. Also, earlier today I was playing a bit of One Warrior.
Yeah.
And I had 7 bombs in the deck of, I think, 12 cards. And drawing any of them would have won the drawing. The side story there. A game with Raven as I lose yet again on ladder. But yeah, this is... I just don't know what Glory can do. I don't think the cards exist at this point. No Boom, obviously unfortunate, but I think Glory would have had to got Boom very early in this game for it to actually change the outcome of this. Yeah. That dramatically, at least. Like I said, you Beryllium a Sentry. You win the game. Oh, it's just gonna. You can clear, right?
Already going with the strategy of, so you like rovers, eh? Well, I have all the rovers in the world. I think he can't go up it. Snip Snap's health is too high.
Oh, right.
I think this.
Yeah. For some reason, I always forget that each new taunt is on 3 health. For some reason, I think it's always lower.
Yeah. I mean, this is just game. But I think if he'd swung with the weapon into the 2/3 first, he had a 50% chance to hit the Snip Snap, and then it would have cleared off all but one.
You have to swing into the Goblin, though.
Had he already swung that turn?
Yeah, he swung the Clockwork Goblin in, right?
Right, no, you're correct. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it was just...
that was nothing. Yeah.
He just lost.
That
was basically it. But Tom, just
2-0 victory. Sweet.
Just 3-0 so far in Season 2 of Grandmasters. And that's the thing, though, is just cool as a cucumber, doesn't he? Like, it's not as if, like, Tom's gone 3-0, congratulations, that's a fantastic score, of course. It's the way he's gone 3-0. The decks seem good, the play seems good. He has, like, what feels like a solid knowledge of the way matchups should be played, which this early in a meta game is very impressive. I don't know how a lot of the matchups should be played because I've not played them enough, whereas Tom, whether he's hit the ones he's played, obviously the Control Warrior mirrors are very similar to previous Control Warrior and kind of Bomb Warrior mirrors in how they're played, but some of the other matchups, you know, refreshing on Zoo, how to deal with Druid and so on, like, I don't know whether these just happen to be the ones he practiced and he got it right this week, but Tom continues to impress, and Glory goes to a 0-2 loss against Tom.
Yes.
So he's 2-1 now.
2-1 overall.
So he did pretty well this week too.
Yeah,
last week.
Both players in a very good spot. And I think, you know, for Glory there were some fumbles at the end, obviously, but I think that was, he was making misplays in lost situations. There was not really any way he could have come back. And I think for Tom there, the main thing for me wasn't so much the way he was playing, but the way he's built his decks. It just feels like he's got the 4 solid decks in the meta.
He's got a good grasp of the game right now, which, like I said, this early in the meta, I don't think anyone's got a grasp of the game, since you can tell that by how many players are submitting completely different decks, completely different lineups, completely different builds of the same archetype. It's crazy.